The name is Liru and the show is Friday Night Debate.
And in that process of accepting people, introducing those people to Jesus Christ, introducing them to the steps and the precepts of Jesus Christ.
Is disempowering to me. So, going back to being an African right now, if you talk to a young person in Africa and tell them to go back to the basics, I'll say go to family.
Empower Bank, which was established to say that we want youths to gain funds.
So I wish you can refer to me the examples of these extroverts that have made it today for us to prove and support your notion.
To really spend the time in doing the research and doing the innovation in order to get to the point where you can produce a new product.
The name is Liru and this is Friday Night Debates. A few days back, there was a vote on social media platforms. I don't really know the technical terms around that, but I know that we couldn't send messages for like 6 to 8 hours or so. And a lot of people were panicking because we cannot live without social media. We use social media to send messages to our friends, families, to update our friends, etc. But are we not taking it too far with regards to the information that we are publicizing on social media? For example, DNA test results. Well, I don't have any answer to that question. But with me here, I've got a lady and two gents, and we are going to be discussing, should DNA test results be published privately or publicly? Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
May you all introduce yourselves to the viewers.
I'm Stella counselor.
My name is Hanyong Yauta and I'm an economics student.
My name is Nkululi. I'm a photojournalist and a businessman.
Okay, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about this issue?
Okay, so first of all, I think we need to understand what DNA testing reveals publicly stands to solve. So for the longest time in our society, I'd say that we've realized that there's a lot of fathers who find it easy to run away from the responsibility of taking care of their children. Whenever a girl says you are pregnant, they can easily deny that pregnancy. And there is no system of testing that because in most instances, DNA tests are expensive for the average individual. Even so, on the other hand, we still realize that there are some people who are taking care of children that might not be their own. And usually in situations where there's trust and with no way to verify what's true, that trust ends up leading on to divorce in some instances, or lack of child support, or violence even in some instances as a result of resentment. So then the reason why I believe it's important for us to be able to publicize DNA tests, we need to understand that first of all, it acts as a deterrent to fathers who think that they can easily let go of the responsibility of fatherhood at the stance of a word and at the support of a family. That these fathers will learn to be responsible and accountable for their actions in and around society. But secondly, I think it's important that we also publicize this issue so that we bring light to this issue as it happens in our society. And one thing we need to take note is that whenever these issues are publicized, they are not a forced matter. The people are not forced to publicize their cases. They are the ones who approach the organization to first of all do the DNA test for them and also reveal those results. So I think that it helps, number one, as a deterrent measure against fathers who neglect their children, and also the deterrent measure against people who falsely lead people to take care of children that are not their own. So that's why I think they should be publicized.
Okay, but that can still be done in private, right? Okay, she's going to answer that. What do you think?
I believe that DNA test results can be revealed in private. Why? Because of in media, when it's made for public consumption, the problem is the content or the comments or the public opinion is not filtered. Yes, and it may also lead to gender-based violence,
Yes.
suicide, depression, chronic mental disorders, and that has an effect in the society.
Okay,
And generation.
Yes, yes, yes.
Of children who got DNA test results from social media.
But from as a counselor yourself, have you ever come across, rather let me say, have you ever come across cases whereby children or even the mother came to you and they were suffering mentally from issues?
Yes, but in the rural areas where they don't have access to social media, we know that the grandmothers who check DNA through looking at hands, they assume these lines, they are going this way. So in our family, they're supposed to go to the left or they're supposed to be cutting across each other. So they tend to be abused because the father is not sure if he is taking care of his child or it's not someone's child. Or they look at their nose and they think, this nose looks like someone from the Moyo family and we are Inume family.
So now I would then say this DNA testing, whether it's public or private, it's actually solving a lot of issues, financial issues, for example.
Yes, financial issues, but
if you don't have money, you can just approach these people and then you get your DNA test done for free and then they publicize themselves.
yes, but the problem is the impact of that. The children, they tend to suffer because from the other family members and the community members, there comes the stigma and discrimination and the comments. You were born through prostitution, your mother is a good person, and that
Especially at school.
yes, and that has a psychological effect on the child. And you might find that even if they grow up, there will be someone who's violent because of that. And we are not sure about the process after the results are reviewed. Do those people get counseling? And from the public opinion and comments, even if the person gets the counseling, you find out that counseling is nullified. Why? Because the opinions of other people may hate speech, or nullify that psychosocial assistant in the center.
I understand. Kulili, you're a journalist. I'm not a journalist myself, but I would just say, from observing, controversial issues, nakedness, all these other kind of things, they come with numbers. It's what the sponsors want. They want numbers. So, is there anything wrong with the issue of DNA tests being publicized?
Personally, because I feel this issue is more of a personal opinion than maybe passing it on legislation. But from a perspective of a journalist, we look at ethics. That's the most important thing. Ethics when we're publishing a story. Who is involved, especially when we're looking at vulnerable groups, the women and the children. Or maybe the men can be vulnerable if maybe the man is the person that is not the father. But let's look at the instance of a child, like what she mentioned. There has to be ethics around that. I believe that paternity test issues, they need to be handled mainly by the courts. That's what I know. Whereby when a father is suspecting that I'm not happy with what I'm hearing or what I'm seeing, or obviously you approach because you already have suspicions, and then that thing needs to be done. Personally, I feel it has to be done privately. Should not be published to the world. I mean, yes, it gets to be published. Like recently, especially in social media, we were facing such issues where DNA testing was like the big thing, big issue. So what I'm saying is, for a journalist's point of view, when I'm approaching a person wanting to publish that, to me, I'm actually trying to appease my audience.
Yes.
I'm appeasing my audience, and to the company that does the DNA testing, it's a financial gain.
Yes.
Let's look at that. It's a financial gain. But what does it do to that family? Do we build that family afterwards? Because what's important is the children. I have a bond with my children right now. I have 2 kids. I have a serious bond. of which right now, even if I discover that they're not my children, of which I know they're my kids, but the less I discover that they're not my children, what does that do to that bond that I have created with those children? You know, it's important that we need to look at those aspects. Yes, journalism, the medical fraternity is looking for gains, but let's look at what damage do we leave behind, especially to the child, to that family. Because I've been watching that show, there is no aftercare whatsoever. Those people are just approached and then it's just published and they're just left like that. You know, if you look at it, the men in those videos, I've been looking, especially when you approached me about this discussion, I've been observing the men in all those videos. The men are not reacting. Their reaction is just calm and just quiet, but that's not how a man behaves. That's not how a man behaves. Let's look at what is the after effect after the video is cut off, after the filming is cut off. What is that man thinking? What is going through that man's mind afterwards? We discover that family is totally destroyed. We have orphans, we have single mothers.
I understand that. But you know what? People out there would also want to say that we've been defending women for far too long.
They have to be defended.
No, like if she cheats and she's exposed, everyone's like, yes, she got caught lastly. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Most men are actually happy that this is happening because now women will stop cheating and men will not be given responsibilities which are not theirs.
I understand. That's why I was saying that when a man has suspicion, you approach the court with your matter. Then the court should handle that matter.
But then money
not
is an
personal
issue.
individuals.
Money is an issue.
Yes, I understand money is an issue, but if it's not a court order, it becomes different. Then the courts will then, because the courts will look at the issue, and then they will then say, yes, a paternity test has to be done. Yes, I believe that if it's a case of the courts, there has to be ways that issue has to be handled.
Yes. You never mentioned children in your defense. What do you think?
So let's talk about children.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been listening to both speakers and they brought up one common issue, the issue of ethics, right? So let's question ethics. His idea of ethics is that it's ethical for him to stay with his children even if they're not theirs, just to preserve a bond that might be imaginary, right? When we think about children, first of all, one thing we need to understand is that stigma already exists in the status quo without paternity tests. In instances, we find that children are growing up without fathers because fathers deny pregnancies. These children are suffering from issues that are real. And the depression she's talking about, the rejection she's talking about, is rejection as a result of a world where paternity tests don't exist. Right? A world where people are told, this is not your child because your marks on your hand are wrong. This is not your child because you have a crooked hand. That child grows up with rejection their whole life. We see that this paternity court or these paternity tests are not something new. This concept that we see is not a new idea at all. And let's talk about what's on the ground, what's there. We all watch local television. We've seen programs like Paternity Court. You see someone at the age of 25 still asking, who is my father? The reason why they're asking is because these children are children who grew up without knowing the true identities of their fathers and therefore never had closure. A father who denied them, a father who left them. We think that if we do not resolve this issue before a baby is born, we are going to deal with it for the rest of that baby's life. Chances are, in a family, already marriages are a struggle as it is. Only 30% of marriages actually survive, which means to say that most marriages end up in divorce. And the main cause of divorce, first of all, is lack of trust between couples. If we can resolve the lack of trust, either way, with or without your paternity test, that family is going to fall apart. And we think that families that are built on dishonesty shouldn't exist in the first place, right? That's one thing we need to understand. What happens when a child traces their lineage at 35? What then happens? Should we prolong the breaking of a bond to when a child is 35, or rather before they're born? Social media, you spoke about social media. One common trait about social media is its ability to forget. We forget because new things are flooded to us every day. By the time a child is conscious of this, probably I did a paternity test before I was born. By the time I know things, by the time I'm 10, this isn't an issue people are still talking about. For half the shows, can you tell me the last names of 3 people that you listen to? You don't remember because you're looking at the next best thing. Social media is like that. People will forget. But what you need to understand is if we live in a family where I can't trust who the child is, or a grandmother just told me this is not your child because his marks are wrong, that is a permanent scar on the fabric and something we need to deal with. And let's talk about women. For so long, the girl child, yes, we still talk about women because they're the most vulnerable ones in this instance. There are too many single mothers because it is so easy for men to deny responsibility. We live in a society where if a man and their family says this is not their child, they are not going back on that word. You can't go to the police. You spoke about the court. Do you know what the court needs to verify that? It needs definite 100% proof of infidelity, but who has that? Do you have cameras when people cheat? Do you know when people cheat? Do you have investigators? And also, court cases are not free. Paternity tests are not free. The average individual in Zimbabwe lives under $1 a day. A person living under $1 a day does not have money to do a paternity test. And that's one thing you need to understand. The reason why people are going through this process without fear of being exposed on social media is because this is something that grieves them. Remember, these people are unforced. They go willingly, knowing the consequences, because it's a genuine concern for them. They need the help. If you watch this show, you should have also read the comments. People weren't shaming the people being represented. They were applauding the guy for such a show that could reveal the truth, because the truth is important. So when we talk about it, let's talk about things we have seen and things we have experienced, and not assume that shame will come, and not assume that society will touch them. As a journalist, are there any reports of a family that was trashed as a result of this? Are there any reports of a mass social media outrage, or a mass social media exposure, or a mass social media? Or rather, we realize that people welcomed this, and to show that they welcomed this, a lot of people watched and enjoyed the show for a consistent amount of time. So we need to understand.
Okay. I'm just going to give you time to defend yourself.
Yes. What we need to understand, I understand what you're saying, that obviously men have been exploited. I mean, obviously sometimes you discover that the person that we feel that is vulnerable, that's the person that is actually not even, that's the person actually that is attacking the other person, the vulnerable attacking the other individual. That I accept, that I understand that men, yes, they've been exploited to a certain extent by women keeping quiet about the paternity of kids. Because, I mean, sometimes women, like when you meet a woman, let's be honest, women sometimes don't even know who the father is. They get into because I mean, I'm meeting this person, I am starting there. This person has a baggage, has a lot of work that I'm meeting that person, and I'm taking that load with that person. So at that extent, it's a private relationship that we're beginning here. Obviously, I'm meeting, you know that she was dating that guy, but we went on. We go into the sheets with her. We know all the baggage that she has, right? We go on and we continue with the relationship, and in the next 9 months we have a baby. And you don't bring up the issue of paternity in that instance. We don't bring it because we're so consumed with love and so consumed with this new experience. So let's understand that that's the time when probably you need to pursue that, the issue of paternity. I don't have a problem with the paternity results or seeking clarity on who the father of the baby is when the baby is born. That's not a problem. But my problem is that being published on national television or international. That's not necessary, because like what she said, the counselor said, it leaves stigma, it brings in a lot of likewise, as she also mentioned, right now you find that when the millennials, we call them number 2000, most of the children, they go into a lot of depression that we do not see. The black child is suffering, and we don't even think that the black child is suffering. So those are some of the things that we need to look into. Are we building or are we destroying? I don't deny that the show was a buzz, especially in the country, something new, DNA test was something new in this country, let's agree. Because we've been watching these on American television, and we've been watching it like on overseas television, and now it's coming into us through social media, and it's something exciting. So let's not be taken away by fame or by what I as a journalist have introduced. Because I mean, that's my job as a journalist, to look at issues that can take off and take me and give me a huge following. You know, that's the purpose of journalism, to sell stories. So let's be careful that we're not following stories that are actually building one individual.
Okay. I'm gonna give you time to respond.
Okay, you mentioned that a lot of people are enjoying the show. Let's keep in mind that here we are talking about actual human beings
Exactly.
and families.
Not entertainment.
I think the problem is these DNA shows, they are all for financial gain. And if they are if they were reinforcing social norms and values and honesty, then they should care about what happens to those people, to those children, to the mother, to the failed marriages. They should be linking those people to post services, but they are not.
But
They
we
just-
do not. Do we actually know that they are not doing that, or we just assuming?
And
Yes.
if they did that, will it be okay? If
Yes.
they started linking them to services, particularly because it's now public. If it's now public, it means that if we know that you two, there was a paternity issue, don't you think that if he beats you, everyone will know? And he can't just beat you. He can't just do anything. If we prove that he is the father of your child, he can't run away because everyone now knows. Don't you think that will make him more accountable for his actions?
Okay, so now there are two reasons why one will be conducting a DNA test, either for medical reasons or there are paternity disputes. So it
Yes.
depends. And then the other thing, I was saying this thing is about financial gain for the DNA shows. I think they should be doing awareness programs to gain cash, teach people about the importance of DNA testing, use role modeling instead of using the actual families for entertainment and for public consumption because of the damage that comes after that activity.
My question is, if I can show you that you're actually building, will it then become okay? Because we keep saying that there's damage done, but you still haven't, it's an assumed fact that there's damage done, but we still haven't shown that there is damage done. Because
But you as
the
a human
reality
being,
is-
if you wake up
But
today and
since
someone tells you that the father that you have known for 25 years is not your real father,
I'll
and you
be
are actually
hurt.
seeing it on YouTube.
I'll be hurt. Yes, right.
Destroyed, devastated.
I'll genuinely be devastated, right? I'll genuinely be devastated. I do not deny that fact. It hurts. The truth hurts. But at the same time, the truth is necessary, right? We can't do away with the fact that we do not tell people the truth because it will hurt them. It's like discovering that you
No,
found
we
a
can
stone.
tell them in private.
In private, yes, first of all. And then tell me now, if these issues are not handled publicly, as they are public issues, we are all come from an African culture, right?
Yes.
And one of the things we say in our African culture is umuntu ngabantu.
True.
We are people who believe that a person belongs in the community. And by the way, if we know our cultural roots, is things like marriage and all these things were handled within a community. Everyone knew these issues. So it's not new to us for things to be known, right? The problem isn't when things are known. The problem is when things are unknown. You talk about gender-based violence. Where does most gender-based violence happen? In private. Where do most abuses happen? In private. Because no one knows what happens within the family contract. No one values the family name at the end of the day. That's why I say that it's a good deterrent measure. Because if he knows that if I do not take the baby she's talking about seriously, I risk exposing and trashing my name. He won't take it lightly. If she knows that if I falsely accuse someone of being a father, I risk shaming the family name. They take this issue seriously because a lot of people have trivialized children's issues. That's why I'm saying that the current damage we have is a fatherless generation. A lot of children who don't know their fathers, who don't have fathers. Problem, damage done, single motherhood. What does a single mother do? Answer this question. What does a single mother do when a father denies a child? And yes, you say they do it privately. But if the private option is not available to them, if you create a private option that's free, sure, let's go for it. But if the only option that says the public one, I still say let's go for it. Not because it's public, but because it's a solution, but also because the fact that it's public doesn't necessarily mean that it will ruin everyone and damage them totally. And also you talked about the millennials. I think that the millennials need to know that there's consequences to actions. The millennials are most millennials are on a live fast track, right? They do things and they let them go because there is no consequence to inaction. We have situations, especially this past COVID, I'm sure you've had stories of 14 and 15-year-olds impregnating each other. We now know of 18-year-old fathers and all these things. What happens in those instances? We need to make them understand that family is something important. If you want post-counseling service, let's tie them in. We can definitely tie them in. Why not have public counseling sessions so that people know how to handle marriage issues publicly? What's wrong with that? If we have public counseling sessions, is that okay?
Counseling is a private affair, first of all, unless if a group comes to you and they ask for public counseling. But there are organizations that offer counseling services. Salsa is one of them. Family trust.
For free?
Yes, for free. We can also link you to shelter if you have problems.
True that. You have very valid points that you put across. Like as I was saying, it's a very good initiative that is currently, I think, in this country, it's being handled wrongly. But it's a very good initiative. It's just being handled wrongly. It's in the wrong people's hands. It's in the wrong hands right now because it's issues that are being published. Let's say, for instance, in the rural areas. I don't know which show it was. I think they were in the rural areas, and there was about one couple, and there was a gentleman. So the couple raised the child, and then the gentleman probably they had sexual affair with the woman way before they met. Before this couple met. So the child that they had was not the couple's child. The father was not the real father. The father was the guy that was, that met the girl when she was too young. And my concern was that issue was being handled, yes, on live television or live, I can't say live, but well, it was being published. And then at the same time, there was a group of I think it was a whole village was just out there waiting to hear and applauding when they discovered that they were keeping a child that was not theirs. The father was keeping a child that was not his, sorry. I looked at that. I don't mind what the woman will go through or what the father will go through, but what that child is going to go through. Yes, it's right that the child has discovered who the real father is, but I feel that issue was being handled wrongly, publicly. It should be done privately. There's issues that can be handled publicly, so that, it brings public awareness. For instance, issues like gender-based violence. It's an issue that's growing, where also men are being affected. And so those are issues that need to be handled in a way publicly, so that men need to be made aware that you cannot continue beating a woman or vice versa. All I'm saying is I'm trying to protect the children here. I'm trying to protect the child. The mother should have said these things earlier. That's all that I'm saying. And the father should have asked these questions earlier. All I'm just saying, let's protect the child.
Do you know that?
To avoid stigma, to avoid damage to the child.
Do you know why mothers don't report from time to time when their children are raped by a father or a grandfather? It's the same words you use. I'm trying to protect the child. So I'm going to hide this thing because it's going to bring shame to them.
I'm not saying let's hide. I'm not saying let's hide the true identity, but I'm saying let's handle it properly and protect the child. It should not be done publicly.
Yes, I understand that, right? And you assume that private is protection, right?
Sure.
You assume that private is protection. But to some degree, I'd also like to disagree with that. The reason why I'd also like to disagree with that is because the only way that we're able to intervene in situations is if we know that they exist. most of the problems that we've dealt with as a society corporately, we dealt with them because that we knew they existed. For most people, it didn't occur to them because they've never experienced it, especially in the urban areas. The issue you just gave in the rural areas, let me be honest with you, none of us would have never known it happened, but this is something actually common in areas like that. These things happen. And counseling services like his can't even think of getting to people whose problems they don't know. That's the thing. We can't deal with crises. We can't deal with problems we don't know exist. Because, take it or not, right? Whether it's private, whether it's public, a child who discovers that is damaged totally, is hurt and shattered. The fact that it was public and private didn't change the fact that damage has been done. But the fact that it's now public, it means that we can then take initiative to say, let's deal with that particular child who has that particular issue. Let's reach out to that child.
I think we've seen that there's a gap when it comes to DNA testing, paternity test, and an awareness can be raised. Teach people about being honest. Teach them about the importance of DNA testing. Educate them. Just like
take it serious.
Just like an HIV test, do we do it in public? But people know that there is HIV, the transmission of HIV. What do we do after a test is positive? So I think this is the people, they test in private, their results are disclosed in private, and they're given their medication in private. But the issue is we are dealing with it.
And we're in the verge of eradicating HIV and AIDS. Right?
Yes, but it's done in private.
Okay, I like the fact that you gave the example of HIV and AIDS. Now, yes, it's done in private, I don't deny that, but these aren't two similar cases, right? The reason why these aren't two similar cases is because HIV is a medical issue. Someone is getting to find out medical information, right?
DNA test is a medical, medical information.
But that's not the thing that's different about this case. The thing that's different about this case is that there's multiple people involved, right? Multiple people involved, meaning that there's three stakeholders. There's the two parents and there's the child, right? It's not just an individual, right? Already by virtue of it being three people involved, two families, two different families involved, it's a bigger issue than we could just handle slightly, right? So yes, in as much as you may say, let's do DNA tests and all those sorts of things. First of all, the reasons, let's talk about reasons why people don't do DNA tests, right? First of all, DNA tests are not free. And that's why I say until they become free, right? If this is the only route that's there, we are dealing with extremes, a world where there is no other alternative. Awareness campaigns, sure, let's do them. But will that stop people from denying babies? No, it will not. Will that stop people from faking pregnancies? No, it will not, right? That's one thing we need to understand. The reality of this being an issue is still there. So let's deal with the issue on the ground. Until a free solution, in fact, you might be surprised at the fact that this public thing exists. And also, you said you work in the papers. One thing that's common about newspapers is that they don't document things that are overstated, right? If you're reporting if you're doing 100 tests a day, newspapers will not constantly be writing, today it was Moyo, today it was Dube and Spanda. They'll get tired of that because people do not always want to receive the same information. The same way that they used to tell us new COVID dates every now and again, to us, that's no longer news, right? It's something common. As common as the issue becomes, the less of this is news, let's make this big, let's blow this up, it will be. The more common it becomes. The same way that testing for AIDS at some point was a big deal. It was a big deal to see someone going to New Start Center. But now, no one cares, right? No one cares. It's not a big issue. The same way the things like, for example, circumcision at some point was a big issue. It was a big issue to see someone getting circumcised, but no one cares. It was a big issue to see someone going to get condoms at some point, but no one cares. And that's the way society works. When we do something constantly and continuously, at some point it stops being a big deal. And I think we need to stop making issues of paternity, issues of marriage, issues of family big deals, because the more we make them big deals, the less we deal with them, right? Issues such as rape, like I said, are still not dealt with properly because they are big deals, which means they are hidden. And in the process of hiding that, someone suffers. And you won't know they're suffering because no one told you. Imagine if the issue of the girl he talked about was dealt with by 5 people. 5 people within that family, and they decide to do whatever they do. Either they do their rituals or they do their ceremonies or whatever they do as a family. You as a counselor can't intervene. Do you know why you can't intervene? You will never know it happened. You will never know that there's a child who's suffering, who has been neglected, right? So I'm not saying that it's the perfect way, but if it's the only way that exists, until DNA tests become free and the only way is public, let's go for that.
For instance, right now it is free.
To get a DNA test.
It is
To
free.
get a paternity test.
If then you decide that you want to publicize your results.
Exactly. So that's the route I'm
But
saying.
now isn't it that prying on the poor?
Isn't that prying on the poor?
Yes, isn't it that's taking advantage of the poor?
I think
Maybe they don't even want to publicize
Exactly.
themselves.
Because
But
I mean, you've been approached that
They feel obliged.
yeah, I'm obliged because they're solving a little bit of a problem, and I'm also getting a bit of cash out of it. Obviously, because they're being paid.
I think
Media. There's a lot of money
I
in
think
the
what
media.
you're saying is similar to saying that
Then that's not a true story. To me, it's just the same as I'm doing photojournalism.
I think that there is no service that can. I think that there's not all services can be granted for free. You need to understand that the fact that someone stands to gain out of a service doesn't mean they stop servicing. Like, I'll give you an example. When you give blood for free, right? How much is blood? At some point, blood was sold at $1,000 a pint. But exactly, it's sold, right? It can sell blood to $1,000 a pint, but what do they give you when you give your blood?
Maybe a couple of.
They give you juice, right? They sell it to someone. And when you say that, well, by them doing this, they're exploiting. The reason why they can't give blood away for free is because it's scarce, right? Would you then say they're immoral to sell blood when they get it for free?
But this is a renowned.
As a donor, I would have volunteered for the good cause.
Exactly.
It's different.
So for their good cause, they are willing to go through that. Now you need to understand, they are not forced to that. They understand what it will cost them.
But
They
it all comes
know.
back to ethics, right? For instance,
What's unethical about
okay,
it?
for instance, what's unethical in my line of work as a photojournalist? I can see a situation happening there, right?
Can I ask you one question?
I cannot go and ask the people to repose that situation. If I start asking the people to repose the situation, so I can take a photograph and file it
Can I ask you a question?
that becomes a wrong representation of the story. So it's the same thing as approaching these people with money so that they can come out and talk about it.
Can I
There's
ask
no
you a question?
ethics about that.
You are not
There's no
paying
ethics.
them. You're not paying them, number one. Number two,
Those people are being paid.
your ethics are based on children, right?
Yes.
That's the children. But in no instance are children's names ever mentioned, right? You assume that
But
because
the school knows.
The
that
school
this
knows
is
that
Ghanaia's mother.
yes, that's
Right.
Mama
The
who
community
and Baba
knows,
who.
right? The community knows. I understand that. The community knows. But either way, the community will also know if they divorce because it wasn't working. The community will also know if there's a single mother in the situation. The fact that the community knows doesn't mean that it qualifies us, because even in your world where nothing is done, in your world where we don't do anything, the community knows. The community sees children from broken homes. The community knows when a father slaps a mother. The community knows when a mother is left by a father. All these things happen within those same communities. So what's adding one more thing that actually helps families to that form of information that the community knows,
Wow.
right?
I have a comment. I'll go back to unfiltered comments. Someone will go under that clip and say, if it was me, I was going to burn the mother and the child. And then the guy will think about it and say, it's a good idea. I've been robbed.
It's something that's
15
been
years
happening.
taking care of
It's been
someone,
happening
not
in
my
this
child.
country. If you
Eh.
read the newspapers, it's
Yes.
something that's been happening. I mean, some time years ago, there's a soldier that decided
It's
to
different.
shoot
People in the
Exactly,
community
exactly.
gossiping.
Now, ask you a question. Let's talk about morality, right? So your father shoots your mother, and let's say your father shoots your mother, right? Now, as a child, your father shooting your mother obviously has traumatized you, right? So let's keep it private and the newspaper doesn't report it. But you said your newspaper is ethical, so why did you report it?
Like what I said, as I said, there has to be ethics in doing things, right?
Your ethics is that let's not expose things that are shameful to protect
No.
children. Your mother shooting your father is shameful.
No,
Why
that
did
has
you
become
report
a,
it?
that has become a public issue.
No,
That
it
has
wasn't
become a
public
public issue.
before you wrote a
Because
story about it.
let's go back to what we were talking about here. DNA test, paternity test. These are private issues. HIV, AIDS, and AIDS
My
issues.
mother killing my
These are
father
private
is a
issues.
private issue.
No, it's no longer private. Right now, I have a child. I have 2 kids, for instance.
Mhm.
I abuse my child. That does not become a community or a Smolanyana issue. That becomes a state, the Zimbabwean state issue. Social services comes in to deal with that issue. Let's be honest. Let's look at into this.
Yes, social services
Yes.
doesn't mean that it's been
It
publicized.
does government.
right?
It's been publicized. I mean, because
The fact that government
is
isn't, the fact that government
government
is
comes
involved
in.
means that an issue should be public.
Yeah, it's not public because the
So
government is involved.
you are saying that
Yes.
for all girls, right? So let me follow your logic. If government is involved, then an issue needs to be public. For
Yes.
every
The
instance
fact
where
that I start reporting to the police, it's no longer a private issue. It's now
Not that it needs, but
Yes.
there are multiple stakeholders that will be involved in dealing with that.
in dealing with that
Yeah.
issue.
Social services,
in this
most probably
issue
the
as well,
hospital.
is social services not involved in broken families? When a family is about to split because of a paternity issue, is social services not involved?
We are not sure if the DNA show they
No,
involved.
it's
the-
not
In this
about-
DNA show,
I'm
they are
not-
not involved
I'm
in
not
social
saying the
services,
show-
but they need
Because
to
if-
involve.
Exactly my
They need
point.
to involve
By
social
you
services.
saying that
The
and
DNA
social
show
services is
should
from
be
government,
the-
yes?
Yes.
So
Or even
using your
her.
own logic,
She's
using your own logic, if we involve social services, which involves government, it means it's okay for the issue to be public because the government body is involved.
All I'm just saying is when these issues like that, I think someone spoke about, I think it's the councillor, she spoke about this issue being handled more of like a model, not like using real people here. You know, let it at least be actors if we are trying to create awareness. Because, for instance, what I'm trying to say is,
We will
yes,
know
people
it's a
can
lie
sign
if we want
consent.
in the
People can
right.
sign consent, but they sign consent under what? It could be under duress. These people are not, it's not because they want to.
That's your assumption that they don't
It's
want
not
to.
assumptions. It's not
Can you
assumptions.
prove to me that they don't want to?
It's not assumptions.
Can you prove to me that they
You
don't
need
want
to
to?
look at the countenance of
No.
the people
No,
in
can
that
you
show
prove to
when
me?
it comes out that they're not the father.
I'll give
How
you
these
an
people
instance.
behave.
I want you to prove to me that someone in a rural area will call a show in an urban area to do something they do not want to do. I want you to show me that these people do not want to. Because in this whole instance, you are working with assumed reality,
We're
which
not
is why I
assuming.
gave you.
People in Zimbabwe starving. Poverty, hunger can
Right.
make you do crazy things in
Right.
this country.
Okay,
Let's be
poverty.
honest with that. Poverty can make people do
But
crazy things in
still,
this country.
again, I say to you, that's an assumption, right? That is
It's not
still
an assumption. It's not an
No
assumption.
matter,
People are
okay,
struggling out there.
yes, people are struggling.
Yes.
I don't deny that
So
people
you,
are
if you
struggling.
find
But
a
you
gap,
still
you take
have,
it.
you still haven't proven to me that the people in that show were starving. I want you to give me an instance to say this person was starving to the point of
Okay,
death.
okay, gents. We are not going to finish the debate. But from what all of you are saying, I'm picking up that we all want the best for our families. We all want the
Yes.
best for our communities, in as much as we are coming from our different perspectives. So now I'm going to give you time to say your last points. How can we improve the situation? Okay. I think that's my last question. How can we improve?
Personally, as I said before, I vouch for the vulnerable, which is the children. Because as I travel as a photojournalist working around Zimbabwe, I've worked in South Africa, I've worked in many different countries, I see that children suffer the worst in situations like this, whether it be gender-based violence, whether it be issues of rape, whether it be issues like this paternity test, children are suffering the most. So let's protect the children. Let's, in these issues, let the courts or people with proper experience, with proper care, take care of these issues. If it's a show that I want to introduce, if it's going to be a show that will expose issues like paternity and DNA testing, let's make sure that we have also an aftercare for these things, especially the counseling part. The people need to be counseled, because we've seen issues where people, especially men, go violent and they kill the whole family. They just kill the whole family. That doesn't solve issues, because he just discovered. Because we as human beings, we can handle certain information at a certain time. So counselors coming in and break that information into pieces to us. I cannot eat the whole elephant at one time. When information comes like that, it kills the person. Anyone can die from having information. So let there be other partners be involved. And also I would like to say, even the social services, or it should be the police, when issues are involved, are reported to them. Let the police also not victimize people for the second time. The person has been victimized and then they try to report it, it's victimized again. So those people need to understand that people continuously get victimized, and let's avoid those issues. But let social services be involved, the courts be involved, so that we can solve these issues. People are already struggling. There's a lot of depression that men are going through. And also, let's at least have awareness, like as you're saying. Let's have awareness that, especially I vouch for the fact, for the issue that when a child is born, let there be DNA testing be done, so that we go ahead knowing as a father that this is not my child, but I'm deciding to be a guardian for this child. That's not a problem.
Okay. Well, how can we improve this issue?
Let's keep in mind that everything that we do when there is a child involved, let it be in the best interest of the child. If there is an issue, exposing it without proper referrals, it won't do any good. You're just causing problems and negative effects. So the best way is to, like what you are saying, we should have linkages, link them to necessary services after the issue has been exposed or has been discussed. That way it will help, so that we don't have broken young children who think they were a mistake, they made their parents divorce, and that will help even in dealing with the parents. Sometimes you find out even if the father is discovered that the child is not theirs, after counseling, some parents they reconcile because of the counseling services that have been provided to them. But just exposing the problem will just make them fight and fuel hatred, and that won't.
Okay. How can we improve this issue?
Okay, how can we improve this issue? I think that I'm not against a world where we link them with social services. I think it's important, as we stated, that we link them with social services. But the beautiful thing about when we handle, or why we let things out publicly in society all throughout time, is because when issues remain quiet and in private doors, with the assumed notion of protection, those issues go unattended. That's why when most people are fighting struggles, right, we still expose them. That's why even as black people, we talk about the most shameful period of our times, like slavery. That's why people still want to talk about Holocaust. That's why people want to talk about Black Lives Matter and police treating black people, because we understand that when people know that something is going on, we stop that thing from continuing and we find better ways of dealing with it. But the more we treat certain issues as no-go areas, as let's not talk about this, we stop being able to deal with them properly. We stop being able to get people to be aware that it's wrong. Now people are careful about things they say to people of different races, because they know that you'll be held accountable for such things. And we think that even with issues such as paternity, we need, first of all, the public to be aware that this is not a minimal issue. This is not a trivial issue. It's not trivial. Let's talk about it. And as we talk about it, as it becomes common conversation, we can then think how to deal with the situation, how to move forward, how to talk about the children. The funny thing is the conversation about how to deal with children from broken homes wasn't as big as it was. But the moment someone started talking about this issue, now people now want to talk about the children. That's the power of publicly talking about an issue. We bring it to life so we can deal with it. So let's raise these beasts that we have in our society so we can kill them. But if we hide them, they'll kill us from the inside continually.
Kulile, I know you want to respond, but unfortunately, we are running out of time. There you have it, Zimbabwe. Please leave your comments below, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook. It's at Liru, and on YouTube, do subscribe to our channel. It's also at Liru. Thank you so much for attending the show. Thank you. Until next time, bye for now.